Today's video has to do with your belief systems cheating you. Did you know that they were cheating you? Well, I'm going to give you 3 examples how they're cheating you after I explain the difference between a belief and a belief system, because it's important. I'm Mike Jacobs, and this is my channel, The Spiritually Awakened Man. I make videos that help men and women better understand and get the most from their spiritual awakening journey so that they've got some basic tools and some topics explained on top of which to go deeper in any direction they'd like. So let's get into this. What does this have to do with your spiritual awakening? Well, beliefs govern your actions and belief systems govern your beliefs. So we're going to start with those things, and then we're going to work into how your beliefs are cheating you out of opportunities or cheating you out of progressing through something like your spiritual awakening, and you're not even aware of it. So what is a belief system and how does it work? Well, first of all, it deals with your beliefs. Where do they come from and how do they work? So let's talk about that real quick. Beliefs are something that we come to believe as true, truths, facts, however you want to describe it. They're immovable objects in your mind, right? The sky is up, the earth is down. That's a belief, probably pretty intractable and pretty accurate. But a lot of beliefs creep into our life when we're not looking, or when we didn't know they were being put there, or we didn't really question them, so we just accepted them. It starts when we're very young. What they say is that when we are born and we start to grow, we are like a blank hard drive in your computer. And for the first 7 or 8 years, we're not doing much with it. We're just having information loaded onto our hard drive. And then around 8 years of age, somewhere in there, we stop spending so much time loading information and we start to use it. We start to run the programs. Well, some of those programs are beliefs, and those beliefs are there to help us, to give us a toolkit of things on which to start operating effectively as children and growing into adults. Things like don't touch the hot stove. And we all know how that turns out, usually once for us all. We're learning things as we go, and we're testing our beliefs and challenging our beliefs in many cases. But a lot of beliefs we're not challenging. We just accept them and we move forward with them. So once you've got this set of beliefs in your subconscious, basically, is where these things are residing. They have to be managed. And we get so much information coming into us through all of our sensories in our body, right? Through our ears, through our eyes, through our scent, through what we feel, what we sense. All these are things that are gathering information. And that information has to come in, and our subconscious has to process that, to react. Usually it's a fight or flight kind of process. That takes the highest priority, and that leads to fear mechanisms and things like that. But my point here is there's a part of our mind that works with our subconscious that's constantly filtering this information out. And one of the ways it filters it out is it sort of filters it against our belief systems. Is this something we want to engage in, or is this something based on a belief that says that is something we don't want to engage in? We don't engage in it, meaning we don't spend any time with it. We don't recognize it. We might not even realize that we heard anything related to it. But our subconscious, in this component called our reticulating activation system, is constantly filtering millions of bits of data a second in our mind, trying to figure out what is the important stuff to let through for us to address in terms of things as basic as fight or flight. Do we need to quickly get the heck out of the way? Do we need to get away somehow because it's dangerous? Or is it something we don't need to mess with because it doesn't really trigger any of our beliefs around the subject? I just saw a snake, and you quickly know that it's probably not, at least where I grew up, a dangerous snake, because you quickly saw that it didn't have a triangular shaped head and it didn't have a rattle on it. So you immediately accept it. There it is. Or you react to it because it's something of danger and you immediately, get away from it. Otherwise, you just kind of ignore it. Those are basic examples, right? But this is what your subconscious and your reticulating activation system is constantly doing. So why does this matter? It matters because if we have a belief that is filtering something out for us, we're not even going to see it. We're not even going to recognize it or give it time. And it could be a belief that's not accurate anymore, or it doesn't suit our needs based on how we've evolved as, into an adult. adult, for example, around certain things. And we all have experiences about this. And so this goes along with a lot of the things we hear and how we react personally and how we experience somebody else reacting. So as we learn new information through our spiritual awakening journey, we have to learn how to maybe change our beliefs. A simple example of this is if you were born into a family of a certain religion, regardless, I mean, you don't really have a choice when you're a child as to what you think of the religion. If you're very religious family, you go to church and you accept what you hear in church. And maybe later on as an adult, you start to question some of these things and you change your viewpoints on some of these things. But when you're a child, you just accept it. And we all grow up with biases toward our own religion if that's the way you grew up. I did. I grew up as a Christian in a Catholic family. Wasn't hardcore, but those are the beliefs that I accepted. When I'm exposed to somebody else's religion, it's not that I really have anything against someone else's religion, but I immediately have a bias to my own religion. So I spend less time, or I'm just simply not interested in hearing about someone else's religion. Maybe I do later on when I'm an adult, perhaps. But I might be missing out on something very key by not really hearing what's going on or not paying attention when somebody's trying to explain something it's different. Might be a pretty valuable lesson. It comes from a place of a religion that I'm not familiar with. And therefore, my reticulating activation system is filtering it out because my subconscious is saying, it's not part of this belief I have. Therefore, it's not important for me right now to pay any attention to it. Gone, filtered out. So that's a simple example of how a belief system manages your beliefs. So just understand that. We're getting pummeled with beliefs all the time, by the way. Our beliefs are what control us. So there's many factors in our society that are trying to feed us beliefs because they can control us. They're feeding us beliefs via TV, the internet, news channels, newspapers, blogs, you name it. Beliefs around politics, politicians, around our diets, what's healthy for us, what's not healthy for us, the kind of cars that we should be driving and looking at based on our demographic. And we're constantly establishing these beliefs. So you have to recognize this. And this goes on with our spiritual awakening. We're constantly getting information in for spiritual awakening. We're bringing it in, but we have to establish a belief around it, or it has to overcome beliefs we already have. Things like the topic of reincarnation, for example, was definitely not part of my religion. And I believed that for a long time until I became, an adult and I started exposing myself to new information that was out there. And I realized that, there's a body of information that's incredibly viable out there that says maybe my original belief, for whatever reason, was incorrect. So these are some simple examples between a belief and a belief system. So let's talk about 3 examples on how these beliefs being managed by our belief system are cheating us, getting the better of us, keeping us from opportunities that maybe would be really great for us to pursue. So one of them is referred to as narrowing the field. Our beliefs over time tend to narrow the field for us. And what I mean by that is narrows our field of opportunity for us because our reticulating activation system is saying, this isn't important, that isn't important. We're not going to acknowledge that we heard this. It's something, and we know it's something you should be interested in. We know that you're not interested in it, so we're going to filter it out. Narrowing the field is important because as we get older, we have beliefs that maybe we're not smart enough, aren't for some reason well suited for maybe a profession change or some kind of endeavor. And of all the things that we can be looking at and have as opportunities for us, they are narrowed down to things that our beliefs and our belief systems are telling us that are here. Hey, here's what you're interested in. Here's what you're good at because you were told you were good at it when you were a kid and you were smart enough. And you were told you're not very coordinated. You wouldn't be a good baseball player, so you didn't pursue something like that. That narrows your field of opportunity as you become an adult. Hey, I'm not good at these things. I'm not good at these things out here. I'm only good at these things, so I'm going to focus on those things. These can really hurt us because it keeps us from pursuing certain avenues within our chosen profession. It keeps us from pursuing certain people in relationships that we think are maybe out of our league, pursuing certain hobbies of interest, music, for example, while we were told we weren't coordinated, so we're not likely to be good at playing the piano or the guitar. That's how it affects us. It's cheating us out of opportunities that otherwise might be very good for us. The second way we're getting cheated is it filters out important synchronicities. If you haven't delved delved into the world of synchronicities, I encourage you to do that. And I'm sure you will. If you haven't already, you definitely will, because they're important. Synchronicities are those things that come along and it looks like dumb luck or just a coincidence. Well, the more you start to realize about the field of potentiality around us, it connects us all in the quantum world. You start to realize that synchronicities are these little things that come along and they look like they're just happenstance, but they really aren't. They're aligned to something that our subconscious is aware we want to do or pursue or are very interested in for a variety of reasons. It has to do with your belief systems, by the way. Your belief systems, if you don't think that these things are important to you through your reticulating activation system, they will filter them out and you won't even be presented with them. A great example would be, let's say you're interested in making maybe not a complete career change or something like that, but you're interested in a different type of a role within your profession and you have the credentials for it and you've been thinking about it. And let's say you're at the coffee place getting a coffee and right behind you there's a conversation going on that's plenty loud, loud enough for you to hear, and it's going on between two people that are discussing something related to this area within your field that you're extremely interested in pursuing professionally. If this is something that your reticulating activation system doesn't have as a belief that you're interested in, you haven't really set that, and maybe prior to that, it was something that you really weren't interested in at all for who knows what reason, but you just weren't. And you've got this conversation going on right behind you that you could sort of eavesdrop in, and your reticulating activating system is filtering it out because it thinks it's something that's out of bounds. It's outside of your narrowed field that says, this is what I do every day right now, and these are all these other things that I'm not supposed to be good at. You're not even going to hear that. If you could hear that and you could work with yourself to realize that you didn't want this as a limiting belief, you'd maybe turn around and say, hey, did I overhear you say, this and that about this new specialty field within my profession? I'm really interested in that. Is this something that you do? Or it's a happenstance, coincidental thing that you're going to miss out on. And that might lead to a new job or a new opportunity or some additional information or introductions. So that's another simple example of how this filtering system is going to filter out synchronicities that could lead to a completely different life for you. It also leads to being triggered. This is the third thing I wanted to mention. If you're in a conversation with somebody, and by the way, it leads to you being triggered or you triggering someone else, which leads to, not having a fulfilling conversation typically. If you have a thought about something, a certain belief about something, and somebody else says something that's very, 180 degrees off of what your belief is, you are going to go into the fight or flight mode. Your reticulating activation system is going to say, this is so far off from your belief that it's a threat. And that flips you into this fight or flight mechanism. And in a conversation, you're going to potentially get triggered. It's a defensive mechanism. And no one likes to get triggered. And we don't like to trigger other people. We just are having a conversation about something, and then we get triggered and we get defensive about it. Maybe it's something to do with some of your deep-seated beliefs along the lines of religion or politics or any of these other things, that we know are are just pervasive in our lives and in our society. So when you get triggered, you don't hear additional information. Maybe someone's trying to make a very valid point, and when you get triggered, you just shut down and you're not going to hear it. They could have tons of peer-reviewed scientific information to share with you that could be very valuable in you being changing your mind a little bit. Not that they're trying to get you to change their mind. They're just discussing it with you, but you're not hearing it because you've been triggered, and you've been triggered through this belief and this belief system that's managing your beliefs. Okay, so those are three areas: narrowing the field, which is against your best interests, filtering out synchronicities that could be very beneficial for you, and triggering you. And by the way, you can watch other people get triggered too. And because you understand this, if you're trying to have a conversation the other way, discussing it with somebody, and all of a sudden you trigger them, they're going to shut down. You can't continue this conversation. It really wasn't supposed to be trying to convince somebody otherwise on anything. It was just sharing information and discussing it like two adults. Okay, it's gonna take that opportunity away from you. And sometimes those triggered situations create bad blood between two people, and you just don't want to talk to them again, maybe. And there's no need for that, but it happens all the time. My own example that I could throw out there is related to my spiritual awakening. When I was younger, let's say in the 70s and 80s, there was this term called New Age religion out there. I didn't know what it was or really understand it. But every time the people I saw referring to that were sort of hippie types, and they were dressed like hippies and had longer hair, and they had these, peace signs, the whole 9 yards, right? I grew up in Southern California in the beach communities, full of hippies down there, and surfers, and this new age religion was coming up. And somehow through the media and through my exposure to things around me, it was aligned to people that looked like what I just described. That stuff was bad, not the way to a fulfilled life, not the way you wanted to be raised. And your parents would advise you, hey, that's, you want to stay away from them, maybe, because it's not in your best interest. We want you focusing on school, focusing on professional endeavor that's interesting to you, so you can go to college and make something of yourself, not be one of these peace sign wearing, serape, wearing, long haired, new age people. Anyway, so that's a simple example. So I grew up, anything I heard that was new age, and it changed a little bit as I became an adult, but it just had that initial bristling to it. And if I had really gotten the notion that a spiritual awakening was aligned to new age, I might not have been as readily accepting of the term spiritual awakening and going down that pathway in terms of some of the material I started to read, some of the YouTube videos I started to listen to. And the funny thing is, a lot of the groundwork for a spiritual awakening is laid in the groundwork that New Age religion did in bringing forth a lot of authors and a lot of great books and fundamental understanding of what that is, even though it's a term that's not used very much, except it's, I think you have a New Age religion section in the bookstore or maybe in a library categorization or something like that. But it's not something we use anymore, really. It's spiritual awakening. So that's a real example of mine that I thought about that ties directly into spiritual awakening. So hopefully you understand these things and they make sense. You might be asking yourself, okay, I get it. I understand the framework, that's at work here. But what happens? How do I change my beliefs? If I have a belief that I want to work on and change because I realize it's just not applicable to my life anymore, or the world has changed and maybe it was applicable when I was a teenager, but now it's not. How do I change it? And I've got some bullet points here that talk about how I do it. This is just me on how I change my belief systems and ingrain different beliefs in their place. First of all, what I do is making sure that I can recognize the belief, recognize it as a belief that maybe is one of the first things I do is I'm more open-minded in recognizing that a belief I have might be outdated. It's just not applicable anymore to me, but it's still there. And I challenge it. And that's how I realize it. I challenge these beliefs. Maybe I got triggered by somebody in a conversation and I realized, why did I get triggered? That was just ridiculous. What was it about that? What did he or she say that triggered me? And why did I bristle at that? Well, you dig into the belief and challenge it and realize that it doesn't apply to my life anymore. I want to change it, either get rid of it or replace it with something that's more applicable. So if I'm going to change it, I formulate a new belief statement, a belief statement that I am of the belief that, and you say the statement relative to the belief that you want to believe in. So you formulate a new statement and then you introduce that statement to your subconscious. If you're not formulating a new belief, you're just trying to get rid of an old belief, then what you're formulating is a statement around, I am eliminating this belief from my subconscious. Okay. And you introduce it to your subconscious. And the best time to introduce these things is right in that twilight zone when you're falling asleep, but you're not quite asleep yet. You say your belief statement. And the next time to say it is when you wake up in the morning, when you're in the same time, kind of that twilight zone. You're not really quite awake, but you're not fully asleep anymore. Say it and do it for 20 days if you can. Say it as often as you think. It'll eventually sink in and your subconscious will take it in and it will eliminate the old belief and replace it with a new one or eliminate it entirely. And maybe it's something you're not replacing, right? The other thing that I do that's incredibly valuable for changing a belief or doing manifesting and things like that, I give gratitude for having changed my belief to the new belief before it has really been changed. So you basically live and conduct yourself and think like you've already achieved the goal that you're seeking. In this case, it's to change a belief or eliminate a belief, but you pretend in your subconscious like, you're telling your subconscious it's already happened. You've already done the replacement or the elimination. So you think, you give gratitude to yourself when you're in that twilight zone. own time for the fact that you've accomplished this, even though it hasn't been accomplished already. This is manifestation concepts, basically. But I put them to use doing this, and it works. Pretty soon, the next time something comes up, maybe that you have had a strong belief around, you won't be triggered. Or your reticulating activation system will just filter it out because they know that you're not interested in it anymore, and it's done. So those are 4 bullet points to changing your beliefs on top of the 3 examples I gave you on how your beliefs and your belief system is cheating you. I hope you found this valuable. If so, I'd love you to like this video, maybe subscribe to my channel so you know when new videos come out. And if you could throw a comment, comment my direction on your thoughts, or if there's something you'd like me to dig into and do another video on, I'd really appreciate that. It's important as you're building these channels to have that activity from the viewers. That's you in this case, right? Okay, thanks again for watching. I'm Mike Jacobs on the Spiritually Awakened Man channel. Be well and namaste.